In this class we want to talk about marketing objectives and to look at some of the factors that will be taken into account when setting marketing objectives. So the objectives are a starting point for an organizational plan, a marketing plan. If we don't have objectives, we can't have the plan. So the organization needs to set themselves objectives to reach goals. Clearly the objectives are very important. It's the objectives that give the marketing plan a sense of direction, gives it a focus. Without them, it would not be consistent. It could even be contradictory. Marketing objectives are concerned with product, services, and the marketing aspects of the business. So it's important that the objectives are clearly stated and understood by all involved. There is a technique that we'll come across presently called SMART, which is a framework that marketers can use to help them setting objectives. And we'll move on to have a look at what's meant by the SMART objectives. Well, first of all, the objectives themselves, these are needed to control the marketing plan. So it's important to have objectives to control the marketing plan. That's the first point. Whether they come through the SMART approach or simply people setting out a plan in a very unstructured manner, doesn't matter, providing they have got objectives, clearly stated objectives, and the SMART approach is a clever way of doing it. Certainly aids motivating individual staff and teams to reach goals. If they know where they're going, if they know what they're trying to achieve, they will be better motivated. If they are drifting along, they can lose focus, they can lose interest, and there's no way of saying if they're meeting targets or not, because the targets have not been set because there are no proper objectives. So to have consistency and efficiency, objectives are essential. Now let's go back to SMART and see what this framework's about. Well, first of all, it's an anagram, so we start with the letter S. So it's important to have specific objectives. Now, it is possible to set out objectives in a very casual format and say, okay, that's what we're going to aim for. But if you follow the SMART guidelines, then the objectives must be specific. They must be clear, and they must specify precise objectives, I should say, to achieve. They must be linked to what precisely is required. It must also be measurable. It's impossible to say if the organisation is achieving anything if it can't be measured. You've got to know where you are now, where you want to be, and you've got to be able to measure the progress towards achieving the objective. So the SMART objectives should be measurable and should be achievable. It's pointless setting tasks that can't be achieved. Nobody's even going to try. So all tasks must be achievable, and people must know when they have achieved them. Otherwise they will not be motivated. So that's SMA. The R is realistic. Does the organisation have enough resources and capability to accomplish the objectives? Back to, are the objectives achievable? Is it realistic? Are the objectives realistic? Are there too much, or for that matter, are there too little? Could it achieve more? You've got to have a deadline to achieve it, otherwise it'll drift on forever. If there's no deadline within which to achieve a certain objective, people again will not try. They'll try tomorrow or next week. They won't try now because there's no objectives, there's no time set to it. It's endless. So time is important. So the SMART objectives are specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time. Now, these are important in setting objectives because they do provide a framework. They do concentrate the mind of the planners. Setting out a marketing plan means there must be clear objectives, and the objectives set out in this framework are realistic in the sense that they're specific, people know what they are, they're measurable because there's been a conscious effort to set objectives which can be identified and measured. They have to be achievable, the box has to be ticked so that the workers and the managers and the people involved know that it can be done. Otherwise they will not even try. Realistic. There are the budgets, there are the resources, there's the time scale, and there are the right people in place. It's realistic. And there's a time scale. It should be done by a certain date. Now, examples of marketing objectives. Well, one example could be to increase or sustain the market share. That could be one of the objectives that's set. And you would apply the SMART framework to aiming at that. Or it could be to expand the product line or the product range. That could be an objective. Or even to enter a new market or to segment markets more effectively. Perhaps the product is aimed generically at the whole market at the moment, whereas picking out certain segments of the market may be more efficient, and getting the product linked to that segment. Perhaps one of the objectives could be to develop an image for the product, a brand awareness, so that customers will recognize it when they go into shops or when they see it in outlets. They can identify it immediately. It has a logo, or it has a certain style, or it means that there is an image that has been established, and you want to maintain the image in terms of quality and reputation. So that could be an objective. So there are various objectives you could aim for. Having set the objective, apply the SMART framework and do the analysis to ensure that it can be done. That's the planning framework. So the examples could be, as I said, the ones we just looked at, or it could be become a market leader, or it could be to increase profits and sales. These would be the upshots of the various objectives, or increase customer awareness, or develop brand loyalty. Now, what are the constraints on all of this? Well, first of all, there are internal constraints. There might be a lack of finance. You might have really good objectives but just can't afford to do them. So there needs to be a budget, and there needs to be careful consideration how the budget is used. And the priority or importance that this is given by senior management will be reflected partially in the budget. Resources tend to be limited for all organisations, and it's important that there's an efficient plan sorted out to get to the objective as efficiently as possible. And also the market power, or the position. Now, it's an internal, because the workers and managers within the organisation know what's happening, and if they know how important their business is, they know how big it is, they know what the competitors are doing, they know the size of the market, at least they have some inkling of it, they have some idea about it. And if the plan put forward is extremely ambitious and that does not correlate to the size of the business, then it can mean that the management is out of touch with reality, out of touch with the reality of the market in which they're operating. And that can affect motivation. So there are all sorts of constraints, some which look external but actually are internal. The workers and managers inside the business must be convinced that the plan put forward is realistic. There are also external ones. For example, when deriving the plan or setting up the plan or the objectives, it can't be done in isolation. If there are competitors in the field, if there are competitors in the market, their existence must be recognized and they will respond to any changes the company makes. If the company increases its promotional activities, they may respond by increasing theirs. So there's got to be some sort of recognition of the existence of the competitors and some strategy to deal with their likely response to any changes that's been put forward. It's also customer demand, and customer demand is determined by many things, by the state of the economy, by the number of people out of work, by the rate of economic growth, by all sorts of issues. So again, in setting up the objectives in the marketing plan, due care and attention must be given to what is the current state and the likely future state of customer demand. And in the context of a competitive situation, that becomes absolutely crucial. It's also the case, of course, that customers could turn against the product because preferences have changed. This happens all the time. There is a product life cycle. Products are very popular at one stage and then taper off and become less popular, and eventually there is virtually no demand. And the onus is on the management to ensure replacement products are put in position, so that when products die, there are new ones to take the place and to sustain the organization. So here we've talked about the marketing objectives, the importance of setting the realistic objectives, and we talked about the SMART framework and how it can help in setting this. The alternative to SMART is simply to fix an idea and try to run with it. It's not very efficient and it's not likely to win credibility on the part of all the stakeholders involved in the business. So having a SMART framework means at least all the boxes are ticked or considered, and that's important. And it's also important to look at the constraints like we're just doing now. So those are some of the considerations when looking at marketing objectives. And that concludes this video. So thank you for watching.